Alrighty, welcome back. Today we've taken a look recently about in Chapter 6 about products, and then Chapter 7 dealing with new product development, and that's what we were discussing about how to generate new products, come up with the won'ts, the can'ts, and will pay for us. Great, and that's what you do for new products or extensions of products. All right, let's take a look at communication, because you may come up with some great ideas, but somehow you have to share that with the world. They have to learn about it. They have to know about it. And so essentially what you're trying to do, dealing with Chapter 8's material, integrated marketing communication, is taking promotions. That's the P of the 4 Ps, product, place, price, promotion, and integrate that with everything else that the company is doing. All right? And what we're trying to do ultimately with integrated marketing consulting is communicate with the relevant audiences, the people that are buying your products, the people that might buy the products, the people that used to buy the products, but also the stakeholders, your community, your stockholders, just the regulators. So you're trying to communicate with them, and you want a cohesive message. Now, when you think about communication, people think, well, it's talking and showing back and forth and reading and so on. And that's great. And if you look at the text in other areas, you'll have a nice diagram where on the left-hand side, you'll have the sender who has a message that uses a certain media to then deliver that message to the receiver. But then the receiver provides feedback to the sender. Now, what are we trying to do in all this? Well, you might say we're trying to educate the people. There are 3 things we're essentially looking for. You're trying to either inform the people, persuade the people, or remind them. So informing, you might be telling them all about new products or services or what you do. Maybe you haven't changed your product, but you're going to be telling them about it and making the opportunity there. Okay? But also you're then trying to persuade them. So this is when they're in the stage of, well, do I buy a Dell computer or a Mac? Or do I buy a BMW or do I buy a Mercedes? That's the persuasion. In that stage, they're going to be in the comparisons, pros and cons, using past experience. They know about the product, so they have a familiarity with it, but now we're in the stage of persuading them. And once they've bought the product, you remind them about it. So when you're looking back at the communication model from sender to message to media to receiver and feedback, you want to take a look first of all as you're designing that process is what is the goal of the communication. That's almost step 1. Certainly before the message, certainly before the media is selected. Identify what are you trying to get the receiver, your customer maybe or your employee, when you're communicating in that way, what do you want them to do? So do you want them to believe something, to buy something, to behave in a certain way? So if that's your goal, now you then have to figure out, okay, what's the message? And by what medium am I going to deliver that message by? So am I going to send out a newsletter? Am I going to send out an email, an advertisement in a magazine, a news report? That's what you're having to do. Okay, but remember, you're trying to achieve a certain outcome of the communication. Now, maybe go back and forth a few times, and that's great. But ultimately, your goal is to have someone to buy the product or not buy the competition and come over to yours. So you're really looking at that goal as the driving force. So when you're looking at the goals, but then once you've identified that, then you have to take a look at your message and the media. Now, which one of those? Which of those do you use, and how do you use those? Well, you got to look at who's the receiver. Is the receiver a company, a group of companies, a customer, a past customer? What age group? So you're adapting your message and your media to the receiver. Not just something that you want to do. You need to do it where you're customizing your message and the media used to the receiver. That's real important because what you're trying to do, remember, is you have to get to the receiver when they're going to be receptive to the message, That is, they're going to listen to it or watch it or hear it. At the same time, they have to be responsive. So if you're trying to get a new message out about sports apparel, probably a good time when people are receptive and responsive is when they're at the sporting events. That's where you may get some advertisements for the jerseys and the hats and everything else. Now, if you're an employer and you want to announce a new policy or procedure, it's probably not a real good idea to be announcing that Friday afternoon, an hour before everyone leaves. Because typically on Friday, people are going home for the weekend. Work is not on their mind. So they may not be real receptive to your message, and certainly they're not going to be responsive in the way that you're looking for. Okay? So you want to adapt your message and your media to the customers. So are people always using their cell phones or their laptops? Fine, that might be a way that you communicate to them. But you're really trying to utilize the communication vehicles of advertising, sales promotion, public relations, direct marketing, and personal selling. Some combination of that to your receiver. And usually it's not just one ad or one message that's going to get someone to buy your product. Very few people will do that. They're really looking at a combination. So you're ultimately taking people from ignorance, so they don't know anything about your product or service, to ultimately through the stages of awareness and interest, evaluation when they start comparing other products and services, where they even try it. Okay? Sales promotion is a real good way of doing that at that time, where you're letting them sample the products. Okay, so now they try it and then adopt it. Those are the stages. And ultimately, by going from ignorance through the stages of awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, and adoption, you have, hopefully, on the other end, a repeat customer. That's ultimately what you're trying to achieve. So you're taking someone from ignorance to repeat buyer. And in doing that, you're informing them first to get them aware of your product and service, persuading them that this is the thing to buy, and then remind them that they've made a good choice and that they're doing it over and over and over again, and reward them. That's why airlines have the frequent flyer program, because it's a way of reminding people how great the airline is, that they should keep traveling the airline, and they actually will reward them for it with frequent flyer mileage, free beverages, club memberships, and special services. And what you look at with this communication model is you're integrating that within everything that the company does. So if the company has to communicate with the customers or the employees or the stockholders, regulators, you use the communication tool and the advertising, sales promotion, and so on to make that happen. Now let's take a look at what we're trying to do. Ultimately, when you're dealing with your customers in a mass market, that's typically when you're trying to inform them. But as you move along, you're trying to get to the segment and ultimately to the target. And as you're doing that, you have this huge mass market, you're communicating with them a little bit through generalized advertising, down to public relations, sales promotion, and they ultimately buy the product. Then it's a matter of reminding them with advertisements and so on. But you're really adapting your communication with the customers to a point of getting the repeat, but using all the communication tools that you have available. Remember, your communication is directed at consumers, users, middlemen, and also internally. You have to have all of them working together towards a common goal, and that's the feedback of the communication loop, so that they're buying on an ongoing basis. Because one of the things you want to do through the communication is to get the people to sample the product. So when you go to a lot of the grocery stores here in the United States, people will let you try certain products, either new sauces, beverages, chips, all kinds of things. When you go and buy a car, you sample the car by doing a test drive. And one of the things the companies have identified is that once they get the customer to sample the product or sample the service, they have a high likelihood of buying it ultimately. Xerox is a master of this. What they do is when they get someone who's a pretty good client or prospect, they'll say, well, let us put the copier in your office, and you can use it for a week or a month for free. Well, when you have this brand new machine, it works, it's reliable, they provide the supplies also, then all of a sudden people get used to it and they don't want to switch back to the other one or a competitor. So Xerox has a high conversion rate from people who weren't buying their machines to when they were, and that really works out well with them. In doing the sample also, whether or not it's in advertising or actually sampling, for example, when women go to the clothing store and try on clothing, they look in the mirror and they see themselves. What they're really trying to achieve is to take mental possession, that's mental possession, of the benefits. So when the woman is trying on the shoes or trying on the clothing and they see how good they look in it, they really feel good, and they say, man, the benefit that they were looking at, increased attractiveness, increased attention. That's what they're looking for. And they say, oh, I can get that by buying this product. So all of a sudden they're taking mental possession of it, of the benefits. And so they say, I really want that. Just like if you buy test driving a new car. You get in the car, it smells nice, it looks good, it drives fast and responds well, and you take mental possession of, wouldn't this be nice to have? And you're more likely to buy that. So when you're communicating with the people, communicate in a way where they can imagine what it would be like to have that new product or service. This doesn't just apply for buying products or services. It also applies for an employer to an employee. If you have new policies, procedures, you want to show them the benefit of doing things the right way. So you almost give them the idea of, well, if we do these things, we can increase sales and we can increase bonuses. And imagine if you had a $10,000 bonus. Oh, what could you do with that? Make a trip, buy a car, whatever. That's what they try to get you to see and take possession of that and say, that's what I want to achieve. And then you have a high likelihood of communicating in a way that's effective that you got the sale. So ultimately, your communication is ongoing and needs to be goal-oriented. That's your first step. Identify what your goal is. What outcome, what feedback are you looking for? What behavior are you looking for them to achieve? So with that, good communication to you all.